All right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Got some people funneling in here, so we'll lay some ground rules and you wait for everyone to join and get things going. I'm Zach. We got Mac here. Mac, he's the one with the radio voice. You may have heard him before. How you doing, Mac?
I'm doing good, Zach. It's it's Thursday already. It's one of those weeks where you just look up and you go, Thursday already?
Yeah, I feel that for sure. So today we're doing a follow-up boss to Sisu and kind of showing how that whole integration works. So we've had a lot of great requests for this integration, and there's a lot of cool things that you can do with the integration that some people might not even know about. We'll go over best practices. This is recorded, so we will send out a recording of this afterwards. Kind of how we wanted to do this. So everyone's on mute right now. We will be opening up things for Q&A afterwards. If you're not familiar with Zoom or Zoom webinars, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should have a little Q&A section. So that's a great place. You know, as Mac's going over things and explaining how the sync works, if something's not super clear, just drop a question in the Q&A. And then when we do our open Q&A at the end, we'll bring it up and we can go over and even unmute some of you to ask questions. This is as much about questions of how the sync works as well as suggestions on how you would like it to work. So there's a lot of things that can be done through the Follow Up Boss API, through the Sisu API, and we're very interested to hear your feedback and just get ideas. So Mac, I'll kind of turn things over to you, and I'll be watching the Q&A and watching the chat, and then when we open things up, we can talk a little more in depth.
Great, thanks, Zach. So to kind of set the stage here, just to context, right? A Real Sync is the platform for syncing between Follow Up Boss and Sisu. At a high level, our syncs have two primary functions, and I'm going to just take a quick minute to step us through that setup process. We do have a knowledge base article on it, and we'll include this link, but to make sure that everybody's got access as reference. I'll talk a little bit about the requirements and limitations, and then also just kind of what are all the features. So in Real Sync, it's as simple as adding a new sync, and let me move this out of my way so I don't get distracted. There we go. So it's as simple as adding a new sync. Choose Follow Up Boss as your source. Sisu is your target. You're already on step 3. For Follow Up Boss, you click the connect button and you'll need to retrieve an API key. We have instructions there on how to retrieve it, but essentially it is going to I'll open this in a new tab, to the admin page, click API and retrieve your API key. Copy that. And you'll click verify, it'll turn green, and you're connected to Follow Up Boss. In Sisu, very similar type process there, in that we will go to team settings, we go to API credentials, and we copy and paste the username and the token as they appear there into the team name and token parameters here. We click verify again. And
hey Mac, can you just verify one thing for me on Follow Up Boss? Is it important whether it's a owner API key or an admin API key, or is that irrelevant?
No, you make a really good point, Zach. I kind of zoomed past that. So no, you're right on target there. Best to go into Follow Up Boss, look at your team, find which one is the owner, and log in as that user. I happen to be logged in as that owner user at the moment. And that's the key that you want to grab. So once you're logged in as an owner, not just admin, it's got to be the owner role. And the owner goes to API and grabs that API key.
Good stuff.
Yeah, good point. Definitely a way of sort of avoiding the inevitable. Why isn't this working? Because it will connect. It just won't work for anybody but the person that connected it. So going back to our sync here, once you're connected, we've got a few options, and I'll take a quick run through a couple of these. Source options, we want to have contact created is generally by default. We don't select it because most people don't want the transaction created in Sisu the moment the lead lands in the CRM. So that's the rationale for having this one disabled by default. If for some reason that is your workflow, you can certainly enable it. But and this gets into sort of the best practices piece. That's the reason we defaulted as to unselected. we look at sort of the appointment set as the first, sort of interaction and pipeline moment in Sisu, rather than the moment that the date and time that the contact was created. Now, one of the cool things you'll see when we get further into it is that even though the contact doesn't make it into Sisu as a transaction until appointment set or maybe even appointment met, or even further down the line, we always pick up the date the lead was created in Follow-Up Boss, and we populate a lead date in Sisu so that you get your full sort of, okay, from the moment the lead came in to appointment set to appointment met to close, you can get that full life cycle. What's the aging and sort of average times and that sort of thing. So that lead date coming over really helps. But the other one that we should probably default as false is note created, simply because all the notes that go on to leads in Follow-Up Boss don't really have a good place to live in Sisu. And then I'm going to walk through real quick sort of the effect of each of these activities for everybody's benefit. Contact updated is really contact information like name, phone number, email address. With Follow-Up Boss, you can actually update your lead source. We'll talk more about that as we look at other options. And at the stage of the contact changes, this also includes a reassignment. We have a activity we can pick up for an email being created. This is actually email sent. And also for text message created. And text message created catches both text messages that are sent to customers, outbound to consumers, and inbound. And then call created, this is where our dials and conversations come from. And then deal created and deal updated is our Follow-Up Boss deals pipeline, which we'll show as we get further in. And then we have appointment created and task updates. And the appointment created is going to catch when you've got an appointment being created and you're using the trigger option to create a transaction in Sisu. Task updated is for showing that same appointment met if you still haven't created a deal. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. And so we'll come back to target options in a moment. I want to do a quick show on a couple of the features that we find some clients are not using in Follow-Up Boss, and I've already mentioned it once, so I'll give some explanation around it. The deals pipeline, Follow-Up Boss, great application filled with features, all kinds of cool stuff you can do in here, and we find some non-zero percentage of our users have not been using the deals pipelines for buyer and seller. It's and they're super easy to use, and it's really kind of leans us, as the topic suggests, into best practices. And so out of the box, Follow-Up Boss has these 4 stages in a pipeline, and these deals can be created from a lead record. They can be created directly in the deals pipeline, and it's for buyer or seller. And these are really the 4 that you get out of the box. I'm logged in as an admin, so I have the opportunity to add a stage, and this is one of those best practices pieces that we've got in the knowledge base article, and there's directions how to do this, but it's super simple. We really want to capture appointment set and appointment met, and you just type in the name, appointment set or met, and save the stage. And you'll see I've already done that in my environment. I've got an appointment set, and you can drag and drop these into different positions, that sort of thing. So once they're created, they actually wind up being down here on the far right. So you just drag and drop them to the front of your buyer and seller pipeline. And I've also got them here in my seller's pipeline, appointment set, appointment met.
Mac, maybe a quick explanation on why are we looking at deals? Why are we tracking deals rather than like, because a lot of people are wondering, okay, why am I doing this in deals versus in the statuses, right? And there's some really good reasons behind that.
Yeah, for sure there is. That's a great point, Zach. So when you think about the sales pipeline, it really starts with an appointment. You probably, it starts with a conversation, and in Sisu you get the big conversations bubble over here, but there's really no need to create a transaction in Sisu over a conversation. And so the appointment being set is really the first really sort of metric that we key in on.
The way I like to describe, sorry to cut you off, Mac, the way I like to describe that is that conversations, that's just a counter. It goes +1, +2, +3. There's no name tied to it. And if you were to pull every single name in there, it would get very cluttered very quick. So we're just counting the conversations. But as soon as you get appointments set, now there's a name tied to it. And we need to get that name. We need to get that lead from Follow-Up Boss. And now Mac's kind of describing how we would do that the way that we do it.
Right. So there's actually a couple of ways to do this. But the reason we're recommending deals and having these appointments set and met stages is because it collapses the workflow and makes it a simple one-step process for the agent. So I've got access to create a deal here, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't create appointments. We'll go into what that looks like, and in fact, I can do that with these leads because I have an option turned on to my sync that says if I create an appointment, go ahead and create a transaction in Sisu, and that's a default setting. If that's not the way you want it to work, you can turn that off. But we kind of recommend it stay on because some folks want to create the appointment, have it sync with their Google Calendar. They may have ISA setting appointments, that sort of thing. So the appointment set, getting the transaction created in Sisu. I'll do that here with Billy Byers real quick. And the main difference and the reason we mentioned using the deals and these appointment set stages is because once we to get a transaction created in Sisu from an appointment, we have to know what kind of transaction we're creating. And the only way that we have to do that is via stages. And the two stages that we support are the two types of transactions in Sisu, buyer and seller. I think there may actually be some other transaction types in Sisu, but we've been focused so far strictly on buyer and seller. And so our lead has to have a stage of either buyer or seller if we're going to be using an appointment to create the transaction. So that's one drawback because people will forget, maybe the lead's in hot or in nurture or something, and the appointment gets booked, and they're like, well, why was the transaction not created in Sisu? So that's one good reason to just use the deals. The other one being that although we can create the transaction via an appointment, we can even show the appointment met date on the transaction. We won't be able to do any further updates like signed or under contract or filling in address information or amounts, GCI and things like this into Sisu without a deal. And so to go ahead and use the deal for the appointment gets the initial start of the data that's going to be in Sisu originating from a deal where all the data would wind up anyways. So it is a little bit of a workflow adjustment for some people. They may be using appointments really consistently and not using deals at all. And so to switch over to, hey, let's just use the deal and do the appointment set and met in there can be a little bit of a switch in the workflow, but really worth it in terms of being able to pick up and continue updating and to get everything.
Another thing that's really cool here, Mac, is that now every time your agents are setting an appointment or going on an appointment, when you create a deal, it's going to ask you to forecast GCI. So you're starting to build a pipeline, which is coming over into Sisu. So, the conversation that a lot of these team leads are having with their agents is, all right, if you want to close 3 deals next month, or if I want to close 1 million worth of volume next month, then you should have 2 million in your pipeline today. You should have 3 million in your pipeline today, depending on what your conversion is. So you're starting to have these conversations with your agents of, what's in your pipeline today so that you're having closings in 45 days, right? That kind of stuff. And this is promoting that kind of, this is essentially creating an opportunity and putting it in your Sisu pipeline as someone that you met with or someone.
Yeah, really good point there, Zach. You're capturing any metrics about the deal a lot earlier in the process than you can with an appointment. So, and all that's
rather than just doing a +1, hey, I had an appointment, you're actually seeing, I went on an appointment with this person, this is the forecasted GCI, this is the lead source. I mean, there's just so much good data that you're capturing for coaching here. So
100%. Yeah. So, okay. So I've got one here that I've set up for Sammy Sellers at 1234 Ridge Rock Drive. And I'm going to put in a full address because the feedback we got when we were putting these together was that so oftentimes the deal is the actual property address that's being sold. And so we take the name from the deal and we parse that into an address you'll see in Sisu when we bring it up. So for Sammy here, I've gone ahead and created a deal in the seller's pipeline. The status will be appointment set. I've got an address, I've got a price, a commission, and a forecasted close date. I can also leave this completely blank. Don't have to have anything in there to create the deal. Right, I can add that in later if I like. And I'm going to pause on this commission piece for a moment because we have an option I want to point out in the sync. As you can see in Follow Up Boss, this is really just a commission number. It doesn't differentiate between GCI and split. And so if I go into Real Sync in the target options here, I've actually got a custom mapping to determine where I want to map that commission value into. By default, we use GCI. That seems to be the frequent majority. But if what you're looking for is to have that commission reflect actual agent paid income, you can switch it over, right? So give some flexibility there. I'll take a quick moment to go through and talk about some of these other options that we've got. You know what? I'll leave this open and create the deal because I want to talk about the duration calls. So we'll look back at these others. Map lead source into Sisu, sort of a course. We do have some customers that say, no, I want to manage those in Sisu somehow, so don't map it over. More power to them. We leave it on by default because that tends to be the majority as well and covers the most. We do have some customers who want to allow updates to lead source because Follow Up Boss allows updates to the lead source, and maybe it came in as coming over the website, but it was actually your next door neighbor who you were talking to at the Christmas party. You said, yeah, I'm going to sell my place. And so it's actually, maybe it's a Sphere lead source. So by turning this on, if you change the lead source in Follow Up Boss to a transaction that's already been synced into Sisu, if you change that lead source, then it'll go ahead and update that lead source in Sisu. But in terms of a best practice, most folks will tell you, and a lot of the CRMs out there actually enforce and don't let you update a lead source once the lead has come in. But there is some, there's obviously some flexibility, and different workflows and different practices require some of that flexibility. So
yeah, kind of some of the thinking here is if a lead, you sync a lead over into Sisu at the time it's being synced, usually, it has the right lead source. If you're changing it then manually in Sisu, you would think that maybe there would be some kind of reason that you're doing that. So you wouldn't want it to then revert back to what it is in Follow Up Boss. So obviously the best practice is have the right lead source in Follow Up Boss, and that should map over to Sisu, and they should match, and they should be good lead source names. So just make sure you have good naming conventions on your lead sources that in Follow Up Boss that match with Sisu. That's the best way to do things. So.
For sure. Good add there, Zach. So I'm going to leave this open so that when we talk about agent metrics and calls, we can talk about that a bit in this option. So I was creating the deal for Sammy Sellers. Sammy's in here. We're going to create his deal, and it's pretty much real time if I say the magic word.
One call out here too, Mac. So you have your deal stage called appointment set. If I went in and I did appt.set, that would not sync. And the help base article explains that, but you got to make sure those names are matching with the same naming convention.
100% true. 100% true. The other thing that's really important to note is my user here, which I'm not sure if I can show you now. My user here has an email address. This is our supported RealSync address. And this email address needs to match the email address that I log into Sisu with. That's really how we do everything from incrementing activity counters to creating and managing transactions, is based on a match between the email address in Follow Up Boss and the agent or user's email address in Sisu. So I created that just a moment ago. And if I refresh here, then I go pop open my listing appointment set. I should find Sammy in the, yep, there's Sammy on the list. And so we parsed that deal name into an address, right? We pulled in the lead source. We pulled in the transaction amount and the GCI because that was the option we chose. We've got his email address and phone number, some cumulative information from the deal as a note, and then we've got the appointment set. And we pulled in that lead date as well, as I mentioned. This is the date the lead was created. I actually created it earlier today.
That notes piece is kind of useful because you can tell when something was created via Follow Up Boss because it's got in that notes section, it's basically made a record to say, hey, this deal came over from Follow Up Boss, here's some of the details. So, if you're ever saying, man, I feel like I have a duplicate in here and I don't know which was created from RealSync and Follow Up Boss, and I don't know which one my agent created. A lot of times you can look at that notes field and know which one came over from Follow Up Boss.
Yep. Good point, Zach. Okay. So that is the deal and creation via the Follow Up Boss pipeline. So if I now go drive over to that pipeline, actually I'll just switch my tab and look at my Sammy Sellers is showing up here in appointment set, and it's as simple as dragging and dropping from one column to another to update that. Okay, I came back from the appointment with Sammy, and he showed up. Yay. We had a great conversation. We're going to move forward on getting his house listed. And now that I've moved this to appointment met, if I go back over into Sisu, and you can see the appointment met is not filled in. If I refresh though, we'll see now that that appointment got met today. And then as I move through the pipeline to listed and pending and closed, will make updates into SISU's key dates, which drive the status in the pipeline, the sign date, the under contract date, and the settlement date, which all drive the signed, the under contract, and the closed or settlement counters here. Now, we were talking a little bit about, this is definitely the best practice that we recommend. However, there is some flexibility, but some drawbacks to, as I mentioned, creating transactions via appointment. And so I'll use Billy here as our example. Billy is set to a buyer. He's got a buyer or seller stage on him, and so that's going to allow me to use an appointment to create the transaction in SISU. And I'm going to take this opportunity to go back over to RealSync and show you real quick in our target options. Here's under triggers is where the create transaction via appointment option lives. And if that's something you don't want to have happen, just from the appointment being created, in other words, you want to enforce that only deals are the ways to get something into SISU, then you can unselect this and click save, and appointments will act like they've always acted. We will do incrementing of a generic counter that's down here in the activity set, just generically, but that's not tied to any specific transaction.
But that's, in this case, that's an example of just a counter. It's going +1, +2, no names tied to it.
No
it's a way to track things. It's not the best way to track things.
Right. So you can get transactions created that way, but our best best practice is go ahead and unselect it and give agents one way to do things, even if it means a change in the workflow slightly, that they're having to open up a deal at the point at which they have an appointment set. It's going to be worth it, because the earlier you start collecting information on deals, the more info that you're going to have in SISU to help drive your business and make the right business decisions based on leading indicators rather than sort of lagging indicators, right? So I'll go ahead and move it on.
It can be done from the same screen too. I mean, you're still on the lead screen. You can create a deal there, create an appointment. Like, it's still fairly simple, and you're getting so much more information on that appointment, as far as forecasted values. I think it's really valuable that way. So.
Great point to make there, Zach, too. I mean, you just don't have as much information on an appointment. All you've got is the appointment and the date and who's attending, right? Whereas with the deal, we'll be able to fill in all kinds of information. And even if it's not all the information you have, we can still send a deal over without a price or a commission, but in fact, that might be the real recommendation here is, you may not even have an address that you're thinking about yet. This is a buyer. He doesn't know what the property address is yet. So call it Billy Buyer's deal, right? And once you get to the point where he's looking at actual property, you can update the deal name, and that'll push the address in the deal name with an address, and that'll push it over to SISU. Once you have settled on the price, you update price, you update commission, and that'll push over to SISU. And if you've done this via a deal rather than just creating a SISU transaction on an appointment, then those updates are going to flow through as you make changes to the deal and updates to the deal. So a couple of benefits here. One, like I say, like Zach just mentioned, you certainly got access to it and you have more data points. Two, it keeps the agent really focused just in CRM. If they want to make an update to the deal and say, yep, this is now, it's now under buyer contract, they simply go update the deal in Follow-Up Boss, and SISU reflects it. They don't have to go log into SISU and go update that, hey, this got changed. So they can continue to drive it from Follow-Up Boss to SISU. And we'll also talk about the fact that we sync from SISU to Follow-Up Boss. So that'll be something we'll cover here in the next couple minutes. So at any rate, certainly can create via appointment, right? So see what that looks like. So Billy's going to get a transaction created in SISU based on the fact that I created an appointment for him today. And if I go over into my dashboard, refresh, and go into appointment set, you'll see it's now at 9. That was the Billy Buyer's appointment I just created. And Billy is here. And his appointment set date is today. Remember, I didn't have any amount or GCI, so nothing came over there. It's just Billy's appointment right now. I don't even know where Billy's going to buy, but I've gotten my transaction created and I got my deal created in Follow-Up Boss, so that as that hopefully turns into a transaction, I'm simply adding to it data to it along the way, and that'll start updating SISU. Um, one other important piece to point out here, and I'll do so in the follow-up boss deals. Excuse me. So a deal, as we all know, unfortunately, not every appointment turns into a deal, right? Or turns into a transaction getting closed at the end of the day. And so you can trash your deal in follow-up boss. Now that doesn't actually remove it fully from the system. It simply puts it, kind of hides it from you, if you will. We actually support that update to a deal in terms of it got removed or sent to the trash in follow-up boss, and the sync will go to Sisu and basically update the status in Sisu to lost, right? Showing that, okay, well, you trashed that deal, so we'll trash the deal in Sisu.
And what lost means in Sisu is it's going to keep that appointment set date. It's going to keep that appointment met date. So basically, you're going to see, if I'm an agent and I had 10 appointments that went through set and met, and only 7 of them went to signed, and the other 3 were deleted, I'm going to know what my conversion ratio is between set to met, met to signed, and basically seeing the fallout between those. So that's really useful for coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So and again, it doesn't necessarily delete it in follow-up boss or in Sisu. It simply sets the status to lost.
Yep.
Good stuff. So I'm going to pause for a moment. We'll talk a little bit more about transactions and deals when we talk about Sisu to follow-up boss, but I want to give a little bit of time to the other primary function of the sync, which we saw in the activities that we were looking at in the source options, the different filter activities, right? So the calls, the emails, the text, that sort of thing. And I said I would leave this open to be able to come back to enable counting for 0 duration calls. I'm going to turn this on. So many customers use a dialer, whether that be a third-party external dialer or some sort of just a VoIP phone connected on your laptop to let you sort of dial for dollars from your computer. And when you dial, follow-up boss plugs into it and rings the call and brings it back through. But so many also aren't using a dialer that's connected to follow-up boss. They're simply logging the fact that they had a call, or maybe they are sending texts through follow-up boss or sending emails. But there are some that really just log some notes from the call, and that's what these 0 duration enable counting for 0 duration calls means. For those that are really just logging a call, like had a call, we are going to set that. Then we want to be able to capture that as both a dial. Obviously, you had to dial them if you had a call, and if you're not choosing no answer, left voicemail, or bad number, and you're not choosing any of these 3 defaults, and you put something in here, then we're also going to count that as a conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit about why the duration matters on calls around conversations. So if I go ahead and log this call, I'm going to get 2 things are going to happen in Sisu. One, my conversations is going to go up by 1, and my number of dials is going to go up by 1. So dials will be 11 and conversations will be 4. I'm going to hit refresh. Conversations at 4, dials at 11. Now, for those that are using a third-party dialer, there's actually a couple of cool features that we have that are based on durations. So in follow-up boss, when you're looking at the available reporting on agents, dials, conversations, text, that sort of thing, there's a metric in there called connects. And you'll see I've got a connects counter here. For connects, their follow-up boss uses criteria for a connect that says the duration of the call was more than 1 minute, but less than 5 minutes. And follow-up boss counts a conversation as a call that lasted more than 5 minutes. So to align more with the criteria that follow-up boss is using, so that customers can do a bit of an apples to apples and say, okay, here's my activity and follow-up boss. Here's what I'm seeing in Sisu. Okay, thumbs up. Those match up, and there may be some deltas. There are some various reasons I'll talk about that there could be some delta between or some difference between follow-up boss and Sisu on things like dials or conversations or what have you. But for a call, again, for a call that is done through the third-party dialer that's integrated with follow-up boss or directly through follow-up boss dialer, our connects are going to be conversations that lasted more than 1 minute but less than 5 minutes, and then conversations is going to be anything that was over 5 minutes. Now, I've got the 0 duration calls turned on, so it's going to treat really anything that doesn't get logged as no answer, left voicemail, or bad number as a dial in a conversation with the setup I've got right now. So I wanted to point out that the connects and conversations piece, we do have some, so I mentioned there's a couple of reasons you might find a difference between Follow-Up Boss and Sisu. And one of the main reasons would be having more than one conversation with a given lead on the same day. Not sure that we want to, we basically said, let's base it on the person, right? And having 3 conversations, more than 5 minutes with the same person in a day shouldn't really bump up your conversations by 3. It should really just be 1 for that unique lead on that given day. You call them tomorrow, have a 5-minute conversation, great. You're going to get bumped for another conversation. But Follow-Up Boss really, kind of counts these dials and connects and conversations and stuff, regardless of whether it's the same lead or it's on the same day, right? There is a metric in there that in Follow-Up Boss that will show you by person as well, like how many people they connected with. So they actually do have their eye on okay, maybe you want the statistic to be a little bit more tied to the person being the lead in the system. And then the other reason you might see a delta is enough customers that it can create a delta use the ability to basically delete a person. If they go cold, if the person says, hey, I'm not interested at all, some Follow-Up Boss users actually delete the contact. We don't think that's a best practice, but it happens enough that there are deltas, because once the person record in Follow-Up Boss is deleted, the things like the dials and connects and conversations and texts and things associated with that person record are now gone from your Follow-Up Boss reporting. So if you find that Sisu is counting higher than Follow-Up Boss, that would be one of the reasons. If you find that Sisu is counting lower than Follow-Up Boss, it might have to do with the fact that we are basing conversations and connects around the person and to the current date. The other thing I want to point out is a feature that is around text conversations, right? And so with this text conversations feature, and we've got a note on it in the knowledge base article, and it's really as simple as setting up an activity in Sisu, which we did. And I'll show you real quick how you do that. You go into team settings.
Same for connects, right? Those are both custom.
That's right. Connects and text conversations are both custom. And you'll see I've got my connects here. I've got my text conversations up here, and the check mark displays it, and you just hit submit and it starts showing up on your dashboard.
If you need to add that, you just click add custom team activity. And this is from, you can see in the top left, admin team settings, add activity on the previous page. That's basically how you get there. Admin team settings, and then go to your activities. That's where you can create that connects. You can create the text conversations if that's something you want to track. All you got to do is just make sure you name it the same way that it's being named here.
That's right. Text conversations and connects. So I want to make a point about text conversations, also person-based. So I'll go back to my dashboard for a moment. There are a couple of text-related activities here, text messages and text conversations. Text messages are going to be incremented when texts are sent to a consumer. Conversations, the criteria for conversations is that a text must be sent and then to a consumer. Consumer responds to the text. Follow-Up Boss user then responds to the consumer, and the consumer responds again. So the pattern being send, receive on a given day to a given lead will increment text conversations. And that is because so oftentimes, well, often enough that we wouldn't want to count it as a conversation, the response to a text from an agent might be not interested, right? And you may say, well, let me know if you are, and they don't respond. Well, we're not going to call that a conversation, but you did send text message. So for that unique lead on this given day, we'll have counted you one text message. If they respond, even if to say, okay, I'll let you know if I am, we're going to count that as a text conversation. Same with, not so with email sent. We're really just tracking emails sent to help you get an idea of how many emails agents are sending. And that's, of course, just as simple as you might think it is, which is prepare an email and send it, and that will increment the counter in Sisu. So I'm keeping my eye on the time here, just to make sure we've got some time for Q&A to answer some questions, or hopefully hear some cool suggestions and features as well. want to take a quick peek at our knowledge base article to see if I left out any key limitations or requirements. User login email address, mentioned that. The admin owner must provide, there's a musty typo there to correct that. Let's see here, sync limitations. Sisu transaction created via follow-up boss appointment screen cannot be updated via sync, only created, right? Custom follow-up boss pipelines and stages are not supported in the default sync, but we can do customizations. We have had a couple of customers say, hey, I am using deals and pipelines, and I've even got custom stages, and I want to do certain things with my sync to populate Sisu in interesting ways. They tend to be a little bit more edge case or kind of unique to their workflow, but we are certainly open to those. Just pop into our help desk and make a request. We quote those out all the time, and you'll see we use the deals created as really the primary way. We mentioned there are 3 methods, but that's really the primary way and the best practice way to create and to update deals in follow-up boss reflective of the Sisu transactions. We've got a list here of the different fields that we map over. And and then last thing is I said I would mention a little bit about the Sisu to follow-up boss sync setup. It's as simple as I showed you for follow-up boss to Sisu. A couple of quick notes there. It does not create contacts or deals in follow-up boss. So the transaction updates that you might make in Sisu will only flow back over to follow-up boss if the transaction was started by a deal in follow-up boss. So really for the Sisu to follow-up boss sync to be of any value, you want to be using the best practice, which is to use deal creation and updates in follow-up boss to drive transactions into Sisu. And
Just,
then last thing
just to pitch in one quick thing on that point, Mac, is that's definitely the way to do it. You create a deal in follow-up boss, it comes over to Sisu, but you're so limited on what you can actually track on a deal in follow-up boss. You want to track different dates and deadlines. You don't just want to track one field for commission. You want to know, how much went to the broker, how much went to an agent, were there multiple agents, what's the full commission breakdown. So once that deal comes over from a follow-up boss into Sisu, you could track all that in Sisu, and you might not even worry about the deal anymore back in follow-up boss because the updates that you're making in Sisu are going to sync right back for you. So.
That's right. So as you update the status, I scrolled over, but status is right over here. As you update the status, maybe it's in pipeline in Sisu, and now it's gotten to a signed state that can be updated in Sisu, and that will actually move the deal in follow-up boss into the appropriate stage, which would be our listed or buyer contract stage, right? Great point, Zach. Important one. And then I had one more item I wanted to mention, and I was looking here. That Sisu to follow-up boss sync runs every 5 minutes. It runs on a schedule by default. You can have it run every hour if you like, or what have you. Most people just leave it at the default. Anybody that's running it typically just leaves it at the default. Excuse me. I remember what the last thing I wanted to mention was, and we've only got about 12 minutes left for Q&A. So you don't have to have a transaction in Sisu in order for all those cool, metrics that you want to get about conversations and dials and text messages and text conversations and emails sent. None of these requires a transaction in Sisu. So I want to make sure I'm real clear about that. We get the question all the time on our support desk of, hey, I had a conversation, but the transaction didn't come over. I'm like, yeah, no, that's true. Hey, do I have to create a deal in order to get my conversations to sync? And the answer is no. These metrics are completely distinct and separate from a Sisu transaction. So I think that was the last of the sort of points I wanted to make and the education we wanted to pass along, just so everybody can better understand what the sync does today and how working in follow-up boss and Sisu can be sort of incorporated, how the sync can be incorporated and really help you get the most out of both systems. We've only got about 10 minutes left, so Zach, you've been hopefully manning the chat. Any questions or suggestions?
Yeah, so a couple of this one comes from David Keener, talking about rewarding agents for generating SOI contacts. So this sounds like more of a feature request, but from what I'm understanding, and David, if you want to pipe in here, I can open up your volume. but maybe only, or maybe we create a custom activity where it only increments if the conversation was with a certain lead source, right? That in my mind kind of sounds like the use case here. So maybe, David, I turned your mic on if you want to mention anything or maybe elaborate a little bit here.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Obviously, I own a team and we spend a lot of money on leads, but we also want to track and those agents that are on our team, and we really try and promote the idea of, hey, we got to contribute. Everybody's got to contribute. Otherwise, it becomes more difficult to profit as a team and a group. So anyways, in a nutshell, we want to incentivize, reward, and challenge agents to not just wait for leads that we're generating from the various sources like Zillow, Facebook, or whatever, but we want to recognize those that have built a database themselves and contributed to the overall, team database.
So yeah, totally understand the end result that you're looking for, and it does occur to me that a sphere of influence lead source could be one way of doing that, so that you're looking at sphere of influence across the various agents in Sisu, and you can see which ones are really contributing in terms of adding in new deals for their sphere of influence. I believe in Follow Up Boss, you can create an SOI or sphere of influence source. Right? If I look through here, I might even have one. Let's scroll down a little bit. Don't see one, but of course I may not have created one.
Another thing I'm thinking, Mac, that might kind of in a roundabout way get to what David's talking about. That story we talked about where you're tracking how many leads an agent received or generated of a certain lead source, right? Mm-hmm. So each time they create a lead in Follow Up Boss with the lead source being SOI and that lead's assigned to them, it's going to have a certain effect in Sisu. So
right. So Zach just used the term story, and that's how we refer to sort of requests or feature requests, ideas, things that we want to do with syncs. And we actually, as Zach mentioned, we've got a story that's currently in our plan to implement with Sisu, where we'll be populating. And I think that actually the lead source update piece is helpful to this, where you can do the breakdown by ROI. And Zach, point me to the right place here.
Yeah, go admin lead sources.
That's right.
And then you would have your SOI lead source. And if you look at counts and expenses, it will show you, that's actually to create, that's not to search.
No.
But yeah, anyways, any of these lead sources. So in this scenario, SOI, you could click on counts and expenses. Sorry, you would be up above where it says counts and expenses next to the lead sources. So click on any of those.
Sorry?
Click on any of them for counts and expenses. And you can see for any given month how many leads of that type an agent either received or generated. So in the case of SOI, if they added a lead into the database with the SOI lead source, that's going to +1 for them. And then you're going to start to see not only how much they generated, but what's their conversion ratio on them. So.
Excellent. Cool. What else we got?
Yeah, so other question was around kind of similar, but a custom activity type. So Brian was asking about how do you set triggers for custom team activity, for example, Facebook post for a listing. And I'm not even sure is that something that could be logged in Follow Up Boss? Maybe I'll turn on Brian's mic here if he wants to maybe elaborate there. You might be on mute, Brian, but if you want to pitch in here and kind of tell us what you're looking for, that would be great.
Yeah, it sounds like something that could be helpful to lots of folks.
Yeah.
Hi there. Sorry, this is Brian's assistant.
Okay.
My name is Anne. So basically what we do on a regular basis for every listing that we have, we try to maximize our social media posts. So this year, Brian wants to track them. Like for every listing, how many posts or social media posts we put up for one listing before it gets sold. Now, I added a custom activity in Sisu for the Facebook post and Instagram post, but I was wondering if there is a trigger tag or word we can use on Follow Up Boss that would automatically count that as a counter on Sisu that would add the activity. It would show us to be posted 6 Facebook posts for a particular listing before it got sold, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's we could add a note on the.
Yeah, that's probably what you'd be left with. Is really more of a note, and you'd be stuck with some sort of a text convention that uses like, oh, you got to spell out Facebook or use the word post. That sounds like something that might be more widely interesting, but probably would best start as a customization to an existing sync. So if that's something Brian wants to do this year, I would advise that he reach out to our help desk and make a request, and we'll get back to him with, hey, here's what it takes to customize your sync.
Awesome. That sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Zach, do we have any additional?
I think that was great. Let me see if there are any others. We do. So the document with all the bullet points that you were talking about, that's on the Real Sync knowledge base. I'm just going to drop it right here because I have it. Let's see. Nicole was asking for this. I will just drop it to everybody. That's the link. You can see rewat.atlassian.net/service desk. That's if you just go to realsync.com and click on support. There's
So, that's right. Big blue button at the front of the public-facing website. Support will take you there. You can access the knowledge base articles. You can also enter in a technical support issue or a product question, suggest a new feature, etc. We love getting that kind of feedback.
Mac, we got like 2 seconds here, and maybe I missed this for a second. I had to step off, but syncing for tasks in Follow Up Boss, did we go over that? So on the right side, you can create a task, and I don't know if there's a custom task type, but that might be, I don't think there are custom tasks, but you and I talked about this, making all of these syncable so that there could be maybe, or for a lot of them, there could be an activity tied to this task in Sisu.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And so if we've got anybody that has an opinion on that, the idea between Zach and I was, okay, let's, we definitely have a thank you cards and an open house and showings and closings and whatnot in Sisu, and these are all countables. And so being able to have an option that says, okay, do I want to use tasks to increment activities in Sisu might be an option. And then we would just match all these up to the existing activities that are available in Sisu. If that's interesting to you, add a quick thumbs up or yeah, give me that. I want tasks to increment activities in Sisu in the chat. We'd love to hear that might be important to some folks.
Cool. Good stuff, man. Well, we will definitely send a recording of this out to everyone who signed up. So, and that'll be shareable links. If you have anyone on your team that you want to see this, shoot it around. It's totally cool. And we will look forward to more requests. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, Mac, but Follow Up Boss has an amazing API. I mean, there's really a lot they can do with it. So
yeah, we're actually excited to dig in and do more with it. Please, give us your suggestions. You want it to make coffee and call all your hot leads that morning? We might not be able to do that, but we'd love to get your suggestion. But yeah, basically any data that you're entering or updating in Follow Up Boss might be a good candidate for some sort of a data point relevant to your business that can show up in Sisu. So, sort of sky's the limit. The API is fully fledged, mature, sophisticated API with Follow Up Boss. So we'd love to leverage more and more of it. And I've actually got a nice little backlog plan of various features, but we always want more, and we're always reprioritizing based on what we get more and more requests for. So if you put those requests into help desk, those will help drive the priority around a given feature. Right.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Mac. Thanks, everyone. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Zach. Bye.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, you had a question. Yes, you put that percentage in and then it calculates the amount, and that will sync over into Sisu. So no worries there. That's good stuff. All right, we'll see everyone.